Welcome to Dungeon Master Talk, the podcast for Dungeon Masters by Dungeon Masters. I am Dungeon Master Kyle, and with me today, as always, is...
Dungeon Master Shea. Kyle, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you, Shea?
I'm recovering slowly. I've been having this little head cold thing that's been kicking my butt for a while, but other than that, I am doing great. I'm excited to be talking some D&D again today.
Well, hopefully you can find that cure wounds that you've been searching for inside this session, and we can get you feeling better.
Yeah, I have it in a spell book somewhere around here. It just keeps walking away from me, as all magic books of mine do. So,
well, that's what happens when you have little druids in the house. They run around with your spell book.
Also true. That is a thing. But they're cute, so I have to keep them.
Well, I hope that there's a multitude of reasons why you keep them.
That's one of the main reasons. I'm just kidding.
Well, listeners, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen and join with us again today. Today we are gonna, I guess I'm just getting right down to business. Today we
Brass
are
tacks,
gonna
man. Here we
jump
go.
into... Yeah, no messing around today. You know me, listeners, the serious one, the one that always keeps us on point as I get a glare from my podcast partner. Today we are going to be covering, well, we're calling it Breaking the Ice in air quotes. Basically, how do you get your party to know each other both in and out of the game? And then we'll hit back in with our campaign that we're working on building and pick up to where the party is at in Amphion. And we have a couple game updates for you. As promised, I know last time we said I would also have one and I didn't. My apologies, but I do this time and hopefully that'll make up for it. Before we get going, listeners, we normally save this for the end, but we truly mean this every time we say it. It blows our minds that even a single person would download essentially Shea and I just talking about a hobby that we love. And so we just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the comments left. Thank you for all the reviews. Thank you for all the emails. We are going to try to get better at being active on our social medias. So look out for that as our New Year's resolution. And hopefully we won't fall flat on that by February, as I am famous for doing with all of my New Year's resolutions. But now that I've said it to all of you, I feel much more held accountable.
And happy 2024, everybody. We've made it through another calendar year. We're going to start fresh. We've got some New Year's resolutions that Kyle just stated and probably some personal ones that we might talk about later. That I just threw that in there for Kyle to think about as we're doing this.
That is not in my script notes, sir. How dare you improv on this show where we are consummate professionals that never deviate from the script.
Writing it in script now.
Listeners, we do not have a script.
What is this script you talk about?
We have very loose notes.
It's true. We should probably get back to topic, though.
Yes. So
as we are one to not do.
Yep. Oh, Shea, I think let's kick it off with that Breaking the Ice, because it is 20 roll for more. That didn't work. 2024. So let's start off with Breaking the Ice for this new year.
All right.
So Shea, I think this question probably immediately seems relevant for that new group.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, listeners, I think this is relevant even when you add just one new member, or if you have a playgroup that hasn't played in a while. You kind of have to, you have the tiers of it. You have that getting your party to come out of their shells and getting to know each other the first time. You have that getting past the jitters of it being forever since you last played. And you have that welcoming a new player into an established game scenario, all of which have that feel of needing to break the ice, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this, listeners, if you're an experienced DM, please don't shy away from this episode. Obviously you didn't if you clicked on it, so I'm talking to the ones that didn't somehow. Thought of that mid-sentence. This is why we really should script. But we don't. So let's start off, Shea, with let's start with out of the game. This is really both. It's how to get the characters to break the ice, but it's also how to get the players to break the ice. What's some stuff that you've done in the past to tackle this scenario?
Well, one of the big things that I do, and I've been doing this with my group for the last probably eight or so sessions at least, is, and I think it actually started on around Cinco de Mayo, is we have supper together. I've done that for a couple of different like small groups that I've been a part of and things. And there's just something about food that brings people together, right? So typically for a session night for us, we'll get together at like 6 at night. Everybody will bring their families over. We'll have a big meal together, kind of potluck style and stuff. And so we'll just get everybody together, talk about life, talk about, work, whatever comes up. And then when it comes time to session, like that's when we've got all of our like pre-game stuff out of the way. And so now we're kind of rip-roaring and ready to actually kind of focus on the game itself. We still have our antics. Don't worry about that. We were full of antics. But like we can kind of focus more. It's not just like everybody just shows up for the session. Hey, how you doing? Like there's like kind of that hey, how you been kind of chit chat before the session. We've gotten that all out of the way ahead of time. And so, yeah, there's that. But the other thing too, like you get to know each other outside of the game. You get to know, like, what do you do for a living? What do you like to do when you're not playing D&D? Like, how many kids do you have? Like, what are your kids into and stuff like that? So I think like food in general is a great idea, like a great way to just bring a bunch of people together. And if you don't have food, just make some. People will come running real quick.
Yes. And for those listeners who you're saying that is an awesome idea, but I play virtually. What can I do to break the ice then if we can't eat dinner because we're virtual? Really cool trick that I've learned is just having that initial time when you first meet. Yep. That even though it's not over food, it's not in the game. It's time to talk. But you, the DM, oftentimes of those virtual sessions, you got to kickstart the conversation. Otherwise, everybody likes to sit there muted.
Yep.
And if you are one that's not adverse to turning on your camera, I highly recommend it because putting a face to the voice really does go a long way of making it personal. That not every platform really advances that. So if you're playing on a platform that really doesn't allow that, that's fine. Just try to make it fun, make it relax, make it welcoming, reach out. But if you are able to meet in person, that food trick, even if it's as pizza, there's so many of my favorite nights that I think back on. We had pizza and everybody was just talking, having fun. Honestly, now with my group, we do bring your own food. But I tell everybody, hey, we're going to start at 7. You can start come over at 6:30. We want to be ready to play by 7. People are showing up at like 6:25.
Yeah.
And others show up at 6:55, but they always that first half hour. We never really start until 7:30.
Yeah.
But I say 7, but I know we're going to have that talk time now because the group 3 years in, they're all pretty tight. So they have stuff that they're doing together outside the game, which is really cool to me because for my play group, I was the common denominator when we started playing. Yep. Not everybody knew each other, but they're a group that each one individually, I was like, you would be great friends with these guys. And you guys would be great friends with these guys. So I just needed to get everyone together. And D&D was kind of how it was really the medium that I used to unite that friend group. And now D&D is something the Fen group does. Like we're definitely a D&D party, and we have all of our D&D jokes. But there's people that hang out outside of D&D now too, which makes me super happy as a DM. It's a proud daddy moment, even though I'm not a dad. Oh, for sure. One of the other things too, like kind of bringing it more in game too. You could do that. You could even have like a game night outside of game night. So like a night where you play board games or you play stuff like Apples to Apples or Taboo or, like just other various games to where you get some creativity in there too. Yep. But another one, Jackbox party games are huge for that. Love Jackbox. They're amazing. Not a sponsor, just a really cool series of games. But that would be amazing if they wanted to sponsor us. Jackbox, if you hear us. We are open. Yes. But like getting in game, I would even encourage you guys to do kind of what's that game? It's called like 2 Truths and a Lie or something like that. But here's the catch. You have to think as your character. So knowing your backstory, knowing your flaws, your bonds, everything like that. Like you introduce yourself as your character after you guys have maybe played a few sessions to maybe say, okay, the rogue may or may not actually have a cow back home
to, he's like a rich guy. He's got like a bunch of cows. I don't know. Or,
he's the rogue's a farmer in this scenario.
The noble guy that thinks he's a noble. I don't know if he's really a noble or not, based on a blah, 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 blah. So like kind of getting in character and like thinking that way, I think can be a way to kind of enrich your gameplay because you're starting to actually like really think and act like your character.
Yes. There's so many strategies in character, and it's really, the trick is to find the right one for your playgroup that really jives. And sometimes it's not the right one for your playgroup, it's the right one for the playgroup in this setting.
Yes.
So sometimes a wacky puzzle that really accentuates, like, you're going to need to have dexterity rolls, you're going to need to have some logic outside the games to get the players talking about what they know and what they've seen, sharing that information, getting them working on it. Sometimes that works for people. Other times, with some playgroups, that actually stops the role play and they just start gaming it. So you have to recognize that with your group. If it's engaging that role play like you want, then more like stuff like that is what you want to go for early on to get them into the character. If you do one of those and you realize, hey, they left their characters behind and it was my players playing that puzzle, then I would say hold on another one until they've really gotten through getting into their characters together. And then maybe it's time to instead introduce a dastardly foil to the party, whether that be in the form of a kind of minor villain that can hang around for a bit, or in the form of bandits who stole stuff from the party. Now they have to go get it back, giving them something small to roleplay over that maybe isn't as massive as having to unveil their entire backstories. Because sometimes players, they deliver backstory, but then they're still trying to rectify, like, does that fit with how I'm actually playing the character? And it's a little bit of, every new character is a little bit of discovery. So you got to give your players a median to, I like that word this week, to discover their character.
Nice.
Notice I've said it twice. Listeners, if someone keeps a tally and will email us later how often I use that word, it'd be great.
For other reasons. Going back to what you were saying with the puzzle, though, don't be afraid as the DM to like say, okay, let's just say, for example, you have a bunch of brainiac people in your group, right? Well, if you have somebody who's intentionally playing a fighter that their intelligence is common intelligence or below common intelligence, if and they get the puzzle solving, which is great. Now say, okay, wait a second. How would your character say that? And make them actually retract that and put their words in a simpler form to where they can actually still communicate as their person. So like if you have your wizard, usually your wizard is pretty high intelligence. So like they're going to be going off on some like big theoretical blah, 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 theorem of something, blah, blah, blah. Don't ask. But like have the players like actually reach into that intelligence bag of their character and say, okay, kind of based on your score, how would your character be able to communicate what they're saying or what you're trying to say in this moment? They don't necessarily have to have like a big fight necessarily, but just like take that concept and either dumb it down, quote unquote, to what your character would normally say. Or if you have a high concept character, then you can, still present the idea in that way. Does that make sense?
And DMs, do not get frustrated if this breaking the ice, if you will, takes more than one session. I remember very vividly when I felt like the roleplay ice was finally broken for my group fully. Because I felt like we did it in kind of stages, but there was a moment where the entire party really got into it. And it's been awesome since. And it was honestly one of my all-time favorite sessions, but the rogue stole the wizard's bag of holding and framed the fighter in the party. I did not arrange any of this. All this kick-started because honestly, and if he listens to this, you're going to see a little bit behind the curtain, but my rogue, I knew the player was capable of much deeper roleplay than what he was given. He needed something. Yep. So I set him up and cursed him And I knew that I was playing right into something that he was going to fall for.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way he had been playing the rogue kind of seat of his pants style, not much thought, not much care. Then I cursed his character and he was like, oh, this changes things. And the curse changed his alignment because he was playing a chaotic neutral. And really it felt like that chaotic neutral was actually coming across as I don't need, like my character doesn't need to be invested in these moments. And I made him lawful evil. And so then he started being a lot more conniving and he really embraced it. But DMs, that's not always going to work. That was a risk. I knew it was a risk in the moment. I knew the player pretty well. I had a pretty good idea that this was going to work, but I had my revert strategy set up in case it didn't, or in case he felt like I took away some of his control of his character, which you got to be so careful doing. Let your players play their character. Mm-hmm. But this was years ago now, and I've given him 3 chances since then to change up his character to how he wanted it, and he's chosen to keep it, so I feel pretty good about the choice. But that was all I did to set this up. He got that shortly after that, it broke the ice for him because he had several big roleplay moments on his own.
Huge.
And then when he stole that bag of holding, and then the party did try to game it. The warrior failed his check to know that the rogue stole it, but he kept trying to be like, no, he's going to figure this out. I was like, no, you rolled a 2. You're not figuring this out. And the wizard crit failed and was absolutely convinced that the warrior did it. But also, the first couple moments, I had to get after him just a little bit. And then it just, something in that moment, it clicked for them. The whole party got involved. And just, boom, like that session, I had a lot of speaking moments at the beginning and then a lot of sitting back and watching them role play. And it was probably the happiest, maybe not the happiest grand total now, but it was the happiest up to that point I had ever been as a DM because it truly felt like the game was now alive.
Y'all would be amazed at how much popcorn he had eaten over the course of those many sessions, just watching us kind of go off and do our own thing. It was quite a bit of popcorn. Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting to sit back and enjoy. My notes were just filled with ideas too, and which was so great because up to this point, all they had done was murder my ideas.
Pretty much.
So it can be, I think that honestly, listeners, that was a very drastic move I made to engage a player. I don't recommend taking that as your first, second, or even third attempts of pushing roleplay or breaking the ice. This was honestly probably 6 or 7 sessions in for us of 3 to 5 hour long play sessions. And I felt like something needed to be jump started for my group. And so I took a chance on that, and it truly was a chance, listeners. It could have gone very bad. So be cautious of making a move like that. I do highly recommend going the route of introducing a common enemy that they can get behind, maybe somebody that's going to challenge the part. A podcast that I once listened to, a moment where it really felt like the players on that podcast got into it, is the DM had several members of the party get arrested and kind of called them out for the fact that, hey, your alignments are good, but like, you walked into this town and you hit an old lady over the head with a hammer. What did you, now you know what podcast I'm referencing. What do you think was going to happen? And I think at that moment was like, oh, wow, this world has consequences.
What?
Boom. From that moment on, they were in it. And that became really cool to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, too, even if you have more experienced players, because I know I've seen this happen from time to time, too. If you have an experienced group, sometimes they fall into, well, my character does this. The rogue will do that. Like, they will kind of revert to some of the tendencies of like a newer player where they're just kind of like, they're role playing, but it's kind of like a very third person type role playing. It's not, there's not any I statements. There's not a, hey, you and I will go do this. It's the rogue and the rogue will grab the fighter to go do X, Y, or Z or whatever. So really trying to use your NPCs as a DM to invoke those character moments. So like say your team gets into the tavern, right? And they're sitting there drinking their ales or whatever. And the barmaid comes over and says, hey, what brings you into town? Where you come from? Like, kind of getting those little fire starters in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So where they can't say the rogue or the fighter or the druid or whatever, it's how did you get here? Where did you come from?
You really want to push back on it feeling like they're playing it like Command & Conquer or Age of Empires,
right?
Where you're above the game and you're moving your pieces. Those games are great. It's just not really what D&D is meant to feel like. D&D is meant to feel like you are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, again, those other games are great. I play StarCraft 2 very regularly. Love it.
Love StarCraft.
Yeah, absolutely amazing game. But it is. I don't feel like I am the champion in that game. I'm moving them around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
D&D, you want to feel like you are the character in the moment that you're playing them.
It kind of ties back to what we talked about last episode too, with that theater of the mind. If you can really build the scene well enough for them to open that mind, that train of thought, then you can really start pulling on those concepts. And I think the more repetition that you can get your players to do that, the more that they'll see, okay, this is what he's asking. This is what he or she, as the DM, is asking of me. You know, this is what I'm going to try and do. And then as the DM, don't be afraid to match them, and or like actually be the guy that goes first, be the person that goes first, and start. You know, you are the guy with the pickaxe. You're going to have to do the ice breaking probably, unless you have a couple of guys that are just really, you know, wackos when it comes to role playing. Like that's just their favorite thing of all time to do in D&D, and then sometimes they will break it for you.
Yep.
But don't be afraid to be that person that goes first and, you know, really immerses your people into the world that you're creating.
You are one of those people who are gifted at doing voices. Embrace that. It's amazing how much, even I am not great at doing voices. I try though. I feel like oftentimes they all end up sounding the same eventually, but I do think it helps to separate what your narrator voice is, because there's times you're painting the picture, so you're just going to be using your voice, and that whatever your base voice is, like this one right now for me, that's my narrator voice. I think I've said this on a past episode. I have higher pitch, I have lower pitch, I have growly version of this, and then I have really, really, really bad attempts at accents that I don't like to bust out.
I have regular voice, bad. I have head cold voice, and then which is actually usually deeper. And then I have a few random accents that I can kind of throw in there that last for about 30 seconds. And then after that, I go back to my normal voice because I apparently get ADD and I forget what I'm doing. And so that's why I just start talking.
But it's amazing, even if it's a bad, like not great voice acting. Because let's face it, 99.9% of us are not voice actors.
Dang it.
We haven't practiced that, so
nope.
We're not going to magically be good at it.
Darn.
But even doing a little bit goes a long ways to setting the scene for roleplay. And I've been blessed by the fact that a few of my players are actually pretty good at it. There's two that are really good at it. Another one, he really doesn't change his voice for his character. He changes his speech pattern. Yep. And that does a ton. That's something I've been trying to get my mind to do actually in game session. I get too hyped. If I'm being real, I get too nervous, too hyped to actually remember to do that. Yeah. I have notes where it's like, this person has a speech pattern that's like this. And then I don't do it. I think I did it exactly for one character. And then the party started having fun with it and they joked about it. And then I couldn't really do it again. Because
I'm trying to remember which one that was.
It was the general, Zornflex that everyone made fun of her name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She had a very specific speech pattern when I first introduced her, and I actually nailed it because I actually sat there and stared at my notes for quite a little bit and was saying it in my head. But
I remember that.
Little things like that, because if you're willing to put yourself out there and seem goofy, it sets the stage to be like, hey, it's okay to be goofy here.
Yeah.
The person that brought us all together, the dungeon master that kicked it off, is willing to be goofy. I can be goofy here. It creates that safe space feel.
Yeah. And some people, for whatever reason, that's just not their cup of tea. And if they fit in your group still, I mean, it's okay. They don't have to do it, but just really encourage your players, if you can, to get into that role play and breaking that character wall of like really owning that character's concepts. just to really indulge yourself into that world and the playing experience.
For the players out there that really like to min-max your characters, get the most out of combat, the most out of your checks, that is still very relevant for this as well. Because a lot of it, it is okay if you didn't fill every perfect rollout in the party.
Yeah.
And it's also okay if you did.
Mm-hmm.
It's about figuring out how you're going to actually use that and make it feel unique to this play session for this version of this character that you're playing. It's not discrediting it at all. I think there's definitely room for both in D&D, and both are fun. There's some times where it's really cool to just have a party that you truly feel insanely powerful because your builds are maxed and they're optimum and you're good at what you do and everybody fits into role. That's all fun. And then it's also a lot of fun when you have none of that and it's jankety stuff and we're flying by the seat of our pants, because that, honestly, for me, that feels more relatable because that feels like how I've done most of my life.
Accurate.
Also, there's times I'm like, hey, I just want to come into a game and I want my character to feel like a boss. I want the party to feel like a party of bosses.
Like a boss.
We're going to wreck these minions. We're going to get through hard dungeons and it's going to be awesome. And then there's other times that's like, I want to have a chance of dying when I'm at the bar and I crit fail when Shea has me roll to see if I could hold my liquor or not. That's a true story, listeners. The one time Shea DM'd for me, my character did hit below 0 hit points while at a bar. It did happen.
He did. Should have rolled better.
You know me, I don't roll better. Alright, listeners, of course there are so many more ways to break the ice. We could have spent times going over like specific scenarios, and if that is something you want to hear, if you want us to get less general, let us know at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on our Facebook page. Let us know your thoughts on it. Let us know strategies you've done. If you've had problems with it and you want to reach out for specific advice to you that doesn't end up on this podcast, that is also something we're 100% willing and wanting to do. So feel free to feel free to use the email for that as well. Again, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help us and other DMs get better at what we do. So we want to hear from you guys how you've handled it. At that, Shea, can you catch us up on what we are currently working on in the campaign?
Last time on Dungeon Master Talk.
Wow, I can't do the intro anymore. You just destroyed it. I do. I'm going to go home and rethink my life. Wait, I'm already home.
I was going to say, aren't you already in your house?
Yes. Where do you go when you're already home?
The basement. For me, I go to the attic, but that's just me. Anyway, so last time we talked about the Cracked. We introduced the first level of the evil organization.
Mm-hmm.
Then we discussed how the organization has taken a big shipment of tavern goods away from the people of Silverforge. They were stolen, and so now the barkeep at Silverforge has sent the party over to Antheron to figure out what's happening and see if they can get that shipment going again, because they are going to be out of supplies soon. So that's kind of the 30-second nutshell recap of where we were last time. And that's where we're going to pick up. So basically, we're going to pick up as the party is coming into Antheron to talk to the distillery as to see what's going on with the shipment.
Yep. And also last time or in the previous time, we described the city of Antheron. So if you want to hear that description again, please check out episode 12 and or episode 11. I think we covered it a little bit in both, what that looks like.
Yes, pretty sure. Yep.
Coming into Antheron, I think this is a point where we want to decide, and I think we've listed a few out. Maybe you have them in your notes, Shea. I'm trying to open mine up to see if I have any, but what relevant NPCs can the party encounter coming into Antheron for this quest?
Well, obviously we have the owner of the distillery, maybe a few of the family members that work there. I'm going to say maybe they have a small goods shop, maybe just like a general pop-up tent that can do like general goods, like a bartering travel shop.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some skilled workers that, can do some basic trades. They can do some buildings. They can do maybe some basic blacksmithing. maybe not necessarily weapon proficiencies, but they can make shoes for horses, or they can repair horseshoes, or little
maybe
things like that.
Repair armor,
armor repair, yeah, just little things like that. So, because I think we've established that there's a few different small little tribe groups here in Antheron. So I would say there's probably like a blacksmith, quote unquote, guild, if you want to call it that, or like a maybe a traveling merchant district, like a caravan kind of thing that will kind of come and go.
And one thing that we talked about very early on is that magic is not quite common, not quite rare. It's maybe like a little on the uncommon side, but we said that some tribes could have like a witch or a wizard.
Yes.
Do we want to exercise the opportunity here at Antheon? Because really, I think to this point, the party has not encountered a magic wielder outside of if there's a member of the party that is a magic wielder.
Correct.
So maybe there is like a old man or old lady type person here that can supply maybe materials for spellcasting or potions or...
So probably an elf.
Yeah. Do we want that do we want to take that opportunity here? Or like softly pencil it in for now?
Softly pencil that one in.
Okay.
Just so that way they've actually been around long enough to actually really have studied the magics.
Yeah, and maybe they're not so... Because it's early, so you don't want to introduce like a super powerful wizard or anything too broken yet.
No.
But that's why I was thinking pretty rudimentary stuff, and it could also be easily explained why, even if they're a little bit older, why they don't have higher level stuff to break the veil a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is... But that's something that we can continue to explore. How are we still going to introduce stuff like into his campaign? So then... they're coming into Antheon. Maybe the very first person they encounter isn't the distillery owner, but maybe it's like a child or the wife or brother that can guide to the distillery owner. Or do you want it to be like they had the instructions, they knew exactly where to go? No,
I like the idea of having have somebody kind of guide them.
Okay. What role do we think makes sense for that? Because if it's a distillery, they might may have fields.
Yeah.
Growing the hops or growing vineyard. They might be growing grapes.
I'd say like a farmhand, like whoever's out in the fields, tending to the fields maybe.
Okay. Farmhand.
And they can at least point them, give them directions. Maybe if there's like a younger person that's out helping them, they can say, hey, so-and-so, go take them to the main house or whatever. Well,
they need to, listeners, this is something that you want to ask yourself when setting up a scenario with an NPC. Is this knowledge going to be freely given to the party if they interact with this person, period? Does the party have to ask her, or does the party have to roll for it?
Yeah.
I personally think that this is going to be fairly freely given. It's always hard for me this is something I struggle on a little bit with D&D, is that because we don't live in that time period. If somebody was to just walk up to me all decked out with shield, sword, staff, bow and arrows, clearly capable warriors, I'm going to be like, whoa, what? Why are you talking to me? What did I do? Not, oh yeah, you can go get that quest information here. But in this day and age, them coming up and not being immediately hostile is probably enough to be like, yeah, I can give you base information so long as you're passing on.
They may not even know that something wrong went down.
Yep.
So if the party just comes in and says, hey, we need to speak to whoever's in charge, he'd be like, oh yeah, it's right over there. The main...
I'm going to say in the notes, freely gives info to where the owner is if asked.
Yep, I'm good with that. And then once they get to the main house... I'm calling it the main house, but the main headquarters operation.
I think a house probably fits the scenario. It could be like an abandoned building, but they're using it as a house / headquarters / where they're doing the distillery.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Living where they work type mindset.
Yeah. Did we want to have the guy in Silverforge be related to the one from Antheron? I think we'd mentioned it briefly at one point, but I don't know if we did.
I really like it because it kind of helps connect it. Otherwise, it's kind of like, how did they get...
Gotcha.
You want to give it enough of a connection that it's like, okay, yeah, that's why, but not enough that the party's going to spend too much time on it because it's not the main thread.
Right. Okay, let's say cousin.
Okay.
We'll just say they're cousins. And say, hey, your cousin didn't receive the last shipment, and be like, wait, that's not real because we watched the shipment leave and blah, 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 blah. Have you guys had any strange dealings around lately? And then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. I like them not knowing that the shipment was lost because it's okay. Now we got some intrigue, some mystery. It's not quite a follow this path for quest.
Yep.
Good party robots moment.
We are robots, nyark.
Yes. This is really the first time on this adventure that we're not like, go here, then go here. This is the first time where it's really opened up to allow them to investigate. So I want to enable that.
Mm.
So the distillery owner doesn't know the shipment was lost, but what do they know?
They do know that it left, and he knows who the driver was that he knows the driver and the route the driver was supposed to take.
Okay, so then he could send them with somebody to the route. Then we'll have maybe even the same farmhand for simplification.
Sure.
Okay, we'll escort party to route if told by owner. Okay, so then that gets us. This is all contingent on if they talk to the farmhand and or by other means find the distillery shop owner. I think if they don't talk to the farmhand coming into the outskirts of town and then enter the town, it's probably just a perception check and or investigation if they fail the initial perception check to find where the distillery is. It's not hidden. It's
right.
When you're in a area like this that we've described, that's kind of broken down, half abandoned, kind of lived in, the places that are now lived in again, it's gonna be relatively easy to identify those versus the places that are outright abandoned. So I think obviously the fast, happy route is they talk to that farmhand coming in. The farmhand will take them to the distillery owner. They'll have the roleplay opportunity with the distillery owner, who will then partner them back up to the farmhand to go to the route. Otherwise, they come into the town, investigate, find the distillery owner, and are back on that trail again. I
have another thought, too. There could be a backdoor way to finding the cracked location, too. So let's say they bypass the distillery, right? What if the people they interact with are timid because they think that the party is kind of an extension of the cracked? And even though the party doesn't know what the cracked is, they can kind of learn a little bit about what this little group is that's trying to terrorize the area of Antheron. So maybe they have oh, are you here to collect taxes too?
I like that.
Or no, we already paid our tax. Don't take anything more from us. And they go whoa, what's going on? We just got here. What's going on? And then maybe they would come in from, we'll just say they came in from the west, and then they would always go north, or they'd come in from the north and they'd go west.
Yep.
Just some other various things that could kind of point them. Even if they don't talk to the distillery people directly, they can have kind of a backdoor way into where this might end up.
Yeah, and maybe they don't know them as the cracked. They just know them as this group that comes in, collects taxes.
Yeah.
To further keep that intrigue until the reveal moment. That's where I put my notes. The ruffians came from. I like that word, ruffians.
Ruffians.
I like that word in a D&D setting.
How about you?
Yes.
Yeah, Ratscallions.
So I guess that really, I think both pathways are possible, right?
Yes.
I think both, we put in both because it really depends on how the party approaches that. Because if the person comes oh, we already paid our taxes, it's well, we're, not tax collectors, we're here to talk to the distillery owner. Okay, that's going to take you to the distillery owner, where you then have that conversation, send the farmhand, or if we already paid our taxes, whoa, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Who's collecting taxes? And they investigate into that. Then they're going to go the kind of backdoor. They don't even talk to the distillery owner. They're going to be sent the directions to where this group always leaves towards or comes from. Yes, to both of those. And can just head straight there. That's kind of like the fast-tracked way, but it all depends on that roleplay moment and the DM's discretion on how that roleplay is going there.
All right. So how about this? What if we, as far as where the cracked place is, let's do percentile for northeast, southwest, like we've been doing.
Yep.
And we'll just say of Antheron. We'll just put Antheron in a figurative circle, quote unquote.
We just don't want it to be back where the party came from. So which direction is the party coming from again?
They headed east, so...
They're coming in then from the west of Antheron, right? If
yes.
They're headed east.
Correct. Yes.
Can't be directly east. It could be like northeast or southeast, but not directly east.
That works for me. I need to find my other D10. Come here, boy. Come here, boy. Okay.
Did you just say here, boy, to your D10?
I did.
Maybe that's my problem. I don't have that deep personal connection with my dice. Maybe I need to like take my dice out for a walk and spend an evening with them. Really bond with our dice so that then
yes.
I don't roll poorly every session.
That might get you at least above a 5. I don't know if it'll help you much more than that, but it'll at least get you above a 5.
The good news is we're coming up on Christmas, and so I can get the magic of Christmas dice.
Oh, yeah, now we're in trouble.
Well, that normally lasts for a couple sessions, right? Until I wear the magic off with my just bad luck. But then if I can get a couple sessions out of that, then we're not that far from my birthday anymore. And then I can get birthday dice that can get me into like maybe that midsummer, early fall.
The back to school dice.
Oh, I need to start getting back to school dice. My wife is a teacher. I should get back to school dice.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
just when she goes back to work, she should get me a present. No, wife, that was a joke. I'm so sorry.
Wait a minute. She goes back to work to get you a present?
Yeah, I know okay, that's wrong.
So, drum roll, please. Northeast is where we're going.
Okay, perfect. So that even plays in a little bit. I love that it had east in it because that even plays into a little bit of why the workers are timid. Because if they would have came from the complete opposite direction to normal, then it's like, why were the workers worried this time?
Mm-hmm.
East and northeast, not that different.
Few degrees off, yeah.
So that's the major information. I think for the sake of building this out, we can always have multiple trips into Antheron where we flesh out more of what's going on there.
True.
For the sake of this quest that we're building out right now, let's build out what comes next in this quest. Okay. So this version of Dungeon Crawl, we're not really in a dungeon, but we're still crawling.
So I think if they go through the town and the town says, hey, when they leave, they go to the northeast. When they get there, there's a couple of guards that are guarding an entrance to like a big building, maybe like a warehousey type building. Dilapidated, obviously, but warehousey type building so that they can store all their goods.
Yep.
And maybe
it's fortified a little bit to make this like a chance where they have to discover an entrance.
Mm-hmm.
Choose to be stealthy.
Stealthy.
I just realized I don't know how to spell warehouse, so I know that's wrong.
As long as you get the basics, I think I can speed read over it.
I think it has all the right letters. Anyway, listeners, I am not a good speller. This is why this is an audio medium. You can't hear when I say it that I misspelled it. That's the good news. So I think this is one of those moments that when we get a little bit better at our social media, maybe we'll draw up a map of this to really paint the picture, because I think we can describe a lot of this stuff. And even if we're using the same words to describe it, we're going to picture it differently in our heads. That's the way the theater of the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking maybe a multi-story, like 2 or 3 floor. Be very precise when you decide that, though.
How many stories?
3. Let's go with 3. And then we'll only describe 2 floors. And that third
exactly.
floor will be a mystery, as all great DMs are wont to do. And I think it should have like a makeshift wall.
Of course.
So that it's not just like you can walk up to the front door or walk up to a window.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the wall has 1 or 2 guards that are patrolling it.
So like maybe have like 1 or 2 actually like standing in front of it. And then maybe 1 or 2 kind of like...
A third that's patrol.
Yeah.
3rd or 4th. Yeah, I think 4. 4's good.
4's good.
So you have 2 stationary sentries.
Basically.
And then you have 2 roaming guards that are maybe up on? If it's a makeshift wall, does it make sense for them to be up on the wall, or are they patrolling the outside of the wall? We're level 2 now at this, right? Or are we 3? I can't remember.
2-ish, 3, yeah.
2 leaning towards 3. So maybe they're not up on the wall. They're roaming around it to give the party a little bit more options. Because as the party gets higher level, you can have more intricate bases because they're going to have 400 spells to get around it and 58 feats to knock out that guard with. And
that's just the fighter.
Yeah, that's so true.
That's not counting the druid. That's not counting the wizard or anything.
Yes. And so this is a point then that we'll put into the campaign module choices. Of course, the party can wait for nightfall. If they wait for nightfall, they can gain advantages on stealth checks trying to circumvent the guards. If they don't wait for nightfall, they don't get that advantage. But also put in their DMs, if the party comes up with something clever, reward them.
Oh, yeah.
With either advantage or inspiration die.
For sure.
Or additional experience points as you see fit for your DM style. I'm starting to get more, so I tack on. I give experience to the whole party to keep them on level to make it easier for me. But when somebody has a really good role play, I tack it into my experience for the whole party, and will still award inspiration dice.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting a little bit more tight with my inspiration dice as the ability for my party to roll better and for me to not has become more and more relevant and less just a funny joke. So they're getting less and less inspiration dice to fix when they very rarely do mess up. I think the other day one of my party members rolled 3 natural 20s in a session, and I was like, I haven't rolled a natural 20 in like 6 months.
84 years.
Feels like it. Then, so that's the outer wall. They'll have to come up with a way to get in. They can of course brute force it. That's just going to be combat if they do that. So if they don't choose to stealth, what is the drawback for not stealthing out at the outer wall?
Well, more than likely, somebody's going to raise an alarm, and then there's going to be an ambush.
Yep.
So behind the wall, you're probably going to have a solid dozen people, because I think there's only 50 people in this group altogether, right? So
yeah. So we're going to say up to 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's 12, it could be a potential deadly.
It could be. Now, again, we're not out to kill them.
Capture?
Capture. I would say their goal is to capture, like subdue and capture probably, instead of just outright kill. Because like we said, they're like lower level thugs. They're not like...
Yep.
Yeah, they're not like high on the totem pole.
Yeah, the party may lose weapons, though, if they're captured, because it might be one that they capture you, rob you, leave you tied up in the woods to wake up. Type scenario, and then you have to get out of it.
There's that idea too. I was thinking they'd take them inside.
Yeah, take them inside. Take them inside.
But I mean, yeah, same thing. They'd still take your weapons, basically.
Yep.
Leaving your skippies, and you have to figure out how to get out of that one.
So that's the consequences. It'll become a large fight up to 12 max. Of course, party could win that. It's possible. The dice are the dice.
It's very possible.
Unlikely, but not impossible.
That's a heck of a lot of experience points. It's very potentially likely.
Yeah, high risk, high reward on that. Of course, if they're stealthy, they can get more of the isolated fights on the outside.
Yep.
Which is favorable. Yep. So now let's say we're past the wall, because we broad strokes what that looks like. If they fail, we can come back and iron that out. So we said it's a warehouse. We said 3 floors. There's 12 guards max. So if they took care or got past the 4 outside, there's now 8 inside. I like setting up intricate insides, multi-rooms in these type scenarios to have stealth options, opportunities to catch the bad guys in a party favorable scenario. And then we can also have, this is not probably the first time this group has raided something.
No.
So there can be an opportunity to have cool early item introductions here if the party loots.
I agree with that. I also think that the guards on the inside of the building are going to be your slightly higher level. They're not like your basic scrubs. So maybe they have studded leather armor versus regular armor. They're going to be a little bit harder to hit. Maybe a few more hit points kind of thing, just so that they present a little bit more of a challenge if they were to get into a combat situation.
I like that, because then that also gives an opportunity if they loot a indoor guard, they can find cooler stuff than they loot an outdoor guard.
Yep.
Let's say for right now, let's take a step back for a second. Let's talk about what loot is possible for the party in this dungeon area. And then, like I said, we can have one of us take, or maybe we will both take a stab. Neither of us are great artists, but we can try this. We've never done this. Take a stab at drawing what we think it is. And then maybe that can end up on our Facebook page.
The social medias?
Yeah, the social medias. Start using that a bit more,
That's my New Year's resolution, to use social medias a lot more. Not medias, medias.
Yeah, the medias. I don't care about the medias. I want the medias.
Okay, so I'm going to throw in one of my favorite lower level items, an immovable rod. I think that would be a fun one for them to find.
It's versatile and fun.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So many uses for that.
Level 2, you don't really want to do like super magical weapons at level 2 yet. It breaks combat.
I mean, maybe you could find like a +1 sword or a +1 weapon of some sort.
Yeah, probably 1 +1 weapon.
Yeah, maybe a couple of potions, unmarked potions that you could randomly roll for on the potions table.
Yep.
Be an amulet of protection.
Ooh.
Like a +1 amulet of protection.
I like that.
That might be a slightly more uncommon item.
Yeah, make that one a little bit harder to find.
Yeah.
And then, of course, studded leather armor from the indoor guards. I'll put that.
Yep.
Because they could get that.
Maybe some of the guys leave their paychecks, quote unquote, underneath their beds.
Yep.
So, if they loot their rooms or whatever, you can pick up some gold.
I put gold as the top one. And then maybe just some cosmetic stuff if somebody wants a chance to outfit themselves. Because if they've raided before, there's prime cloth and stuff. So
okay, I like that.
Cosmetic findings. Listeners, in real life, back in the day, sometimes cloth goods was worth as much as steel in some scenarios.
Yeah, especially to a noble.
Yep. In this case, it's probably not quite that high quality. But don't forget to apply some form of monetary value to the goods you find. It can be less than a gold piece. That's fine. But early on, D&D is so funny. Early on, the party feels starved for gold because you don't have great equipment. You want the gold to get better equipment. And then later on, you're trying to find ways to make them spend their tons of gold that they have. Because if you don't give them ample opportunities to spend their gold, it can start to feel almost meaningless because of the amount that they acquire in a single dungeon crawl. Or if they're like my party, they go on like a 3 dungeon crawl long adventure, and then finally they encounter a town and they're like, I have all this gold.
Boosh, there it goes.
So I think that's a good amount of stuff to find, and really what is our true first dungeon crawl experience.
Mm-hmm.
Do we feel like this one needs a special boss? Or personally, I feel like the 8 internal guards.
I think there needs to be at least one brain for this whole thing.
Yep.
But the brain doesn't have to be that brainy.
Right. Yeah, because they're cracked. So they're not known for their intelligence.
No, that'll give you the tie into the whole broken divine thing. Like that's how we're going to jumpstart into the bigger picture. He doesn't necessarily know the names of the upper levels, maybe, but he knows who he has to pay his taxes to, or like his dues.
Yep.
So that person comes and picks it up, and usually it's one of those things like he brings his cronies, they don't ask any questions, they don't get any answers even if they were to ask questions, and they take what they take, and then they say, do better next time.
Yep, I love that. I think next time what we should do is try to spec out that person a tiny bit.
Yes.
We will then wrap this up to we'll handle the scenario of if they're subdued and captured, what is the possibilities of getting out for the party, and then fully wrap up this crawl back, which is of course going to result, hopefully unless the party gets killed, the result is they take out this leader, they can gain his information, and where does that lead from here? You good with that, Shea?
I am good with that, sir.
So, with that, listeners, next up, we have some game updates! You're getting so fancy.
I'm trying. Trying to make us as legitimate as possible.
I appreciate it. Listeners, I do want to apologize. I full on meant to have a update for you guys from my playgroup last time. Unfortunately, life was life, and that didn't get to happen, but it is happening this time. since I last recapped for you guys, a lot has happened in my campaign. There was 2 very big play sessions.
We broke the game.
Yes, they did. So I think where I left off my last update in this podcast, we were in the middle of big, heavy battle.
Mm-hmm.
There was some good stuff going and some bad stuff going. The good stuff going, the party had brought in a, quite frankly, majorly overpowered NPC that I had introduced as a gag much earlier in the season. But of course, they use all my stuff to come back and bite me later. They had summoned him into this battle, the topside battle, as I call it, even though it was still under a mountain, but it was the less below ground of the 2 battles.
Mm-hmm.
And that really turned the tides of the battle. But one of our fighters he was hit by the command spell, and he was compelled to attack our druid, who had just gotten a magical item that let her teleport around.
Mm-hmm.
So she was enjoying getting to teleport, and he was attacking her. She also had shoes that allowed her to fly, so it was quite hilarious because he was not the ranged fighter. So he was just grabbing swords off the ground and chucking it. So that was a good time. But things were not going as well for the half of the party that was further below ground.
Nope.
Down there is pretty dire. So Shea was in death saving throws for a bit. Luckily,
I'm not dead yet.
I was not ready for when he told me he went down. I was like, really?
Yep, I'm down.
I've never taken Shea down before. So that was, I only roll good against Shea. It's the power of the podcast.
It's true.
And then the earth elemental that they're fighting brought the roof of the cavern that they're in down. It wasn't a full cave collapse though, luckily for them, because I didn't roll good enough for that. But in that shenanigans, the earth elemental was able to hide again. There was a slight lull in the battle below ground, and a NPC that they thought that they were traveling with reappeared to them and basically was like, why'd you guys abandon me? I've been in this fight. I was yelling at you for help. You weren't helping me. And of course, this was news to the party because they were in a fight and this guy was just gone from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to rectify their 2 stories to see how this could be possible when they noticed that they were standing before a giant earthy throne underground.
Mm-hmm.
And they approached the throne, and this, of course, brought back up the earth elemental because this is his area that he's protecting, his territory.
Yep.
And earth elemental was all ready to fight again, but our rogue decided to take a different tactic because the fight didn't go so well for them the first time. And his tactic was to offer a shiny pearl from his bag to the earth elemental in hopes to exchange it for the stone that was in the earth elemental's head, giving it life. Of course, our earth elemental didn't quite fall for that, but it did create a distraction that the wizard then used to yank the stone out of the earth elemental's head and defeat the earth elemental. For that moment, everything seemed good for the party, and then suddenly...
Yay!
Yeah, they were all happy. They thought that they had once again done good. But then that NPC that had reconvened with the party below ground stabbed our wizard in the back, literally, and downed the wizard.
Oopsie.
In downing him, the NPC revealed that he was actually the evil wizard in disguise. The evil wizard was now in possession of the stone, which basically granted him a maxed out stat, whatever his best stat maxed out, basically. So it's very bad for the party.
Yeah.
But the rogue rolled insanely good and downed the evil wizard in one shot because the evil wizard was wounded from the previous battle. So now he was in possession of the stone, or at least he was trying to, because the stone was falling from the sky from falling out of the wizard's mage hand.
Mm.
So then another NPC that they had thought had lost showed up. And the party's rejoicing because they think this guy's a good guy. This is a true betrayal, though. And he becomes in possession of the stone at the same time as our rogue. They both used the stone to pull. When the stone maxed out their strength, they both pulled on it and shattered their stone and broke reality. So, whoops, they ended the game in the bad way. No more planet. Luckily for them, that is not the end of the campaign. They found themselves in a void surrounded by the deities that form our pantheon in the game. And the deities were arguing over what happened. Because, as it was revealed to the party, all this was in competition for them to replace a member of the pantheon who was essentially dying. He was becoming part of the greater whole, so he was no longer going to be a sentient deity over the world that I had created. So, that was the whole point of all that was going on, and that was revealed to the party. They had mixed feelings about this, as revealed to them that they were essentially just, their lives were all part of the deity's game, as they called it themselves.
It's true.
They were able to get past that as they started to fight partially because they realized one of the options that the deities were throwing about was not restarting their world and just letting everyone die. So the party then started negotiating and arguing with the deities. The head of the pantheon decided to get representatives from the alignment of good and the alignment of evil to each propose a plan for how to proceed. And basically because she was tired of hearing from the other gods in the pantheon as she had done for her all of eternity up to this point. While they were doing all this, that mega warrior, that NPC I mentioned earlier that they introduced to kind of Deus Ex Machina, the fight above ground, he sliced through the wall of the void to bring himself in, and it's revealed that he's a demigod. He was the original champion of the gods, and he's this really powerful being that's reborn again and again, maintaining all his memories from his past life. But each time he does so, his mind becomes more fractured. So he started off as like the perfect embodiment for good, and with each iteration of his life, he's becoming more and more chaotic. And so he comes in, it was kind of levity moment, and he goes off, but then the head of the pantheon calls for the representative of good to propose their plan, and the party had selected our archer to do that. He did a very good job.
He did.
Proposing a plan. Then the representative of evil, surprisingly, didn't introduce that different of a plan, just one small tweak, which shocked the party because they had spent a long time trying to predict what the bad guys would propose, and this is not what they thought they'd propose, so they kind of felt duped. And then that NPC warrior had mentioned just a minute ago, the demigod came in. Sorry, this is taking so long, everybody. It's 2 sessions and a lot happened.
Yeah.
Came in and went off on the pantheon and all present because the pantheon let somebody else speak for good, and he was a representative of the nature of good. And he did not take kindly to being left out in this discussion, and he threatened the pantheon and threatened to recreate the world himself if they did not do it. Then when one of the gods stepped in to calm him down, he grew to the size of one of the gods in his rage, and he grabbed that god by the throat and lifted him up into the air. The other deities of the pantheon then intervened. That god, though, wasn't worried. He just spoke softly into the ear of the champion, who then lowered him slowly, reverted to his normal side, and peaced out. But it was a really fun moment to roleplay that I was really excited for, and it landed how I wanted to. The party was stunned silent from it, and then they all kind of fanboyed out about it, which is exactly what I wanted. And then the world was reset, and we are now in what I call season 3, and we got a little bit of an epilogue of season 2 as they're dealing out with the being reintroduced into this world, and the world now has an alternate timeline, a slight different variant of how this world remembers the past events to rectify the changes that the deities have made to the air quotes game, because the party is no longer questing over individual gems to combine together to create the logical power set of a deity and become a god. They are trying to find the one location where the remaining stones are all combined as one, and the first person or living being to reach that, defeat the all-powerful guardian at it or outsmart that guardian to claim that stone, will then win the game and be the next deity upon the pantheon. And all of the deities on the pantheon are banned from interacting with the game henceforth. They are to let the pieces play out, to quote the head of the pantheon. So it's a slightly different world now that they're in. They've had some heavily involvement from their deities up to this point. To their understanding, that's going to be either no more engagement or significantly less engagement, and they are dealing with the fun facts of rectifying their memories from what they know actually happened to what they also know is what other people think happened. Contain both memories. So that was really fun to epilogue that a little bit with those who were still present. And I'm super excited for the next session as we kick off season 3 proper.
Season 3. All right. For our group, last time we had taken out a genie, and then we took out a couple of Druagar, and so that was kind of fun. And then, so my group, being the adventurous group that they are, they love to make it a point to not leave any prisoners. And so they like to play it, kind of go room by room and figure out what's going on. My rogue looked into this room, and she saw like this, looked like a barracks saw somebody standing in there, like one or two guys kind of standing in there. Then she breaks down the door, and then she quickly realizes that there wasn't only 2 in there. There were 8 people total, and there was only 6 of them that night. So they were slightly outmatched, but the group ended up prevailing because my cleric decided to finally looked and found a silence spell, which kept some of my spellcasters from casting shatter on my group and dealing a bunch of thunder damage. But other than that, that's really about as far as we got last time. It was more of just like a big fight session, and now they're getting ready for a long rest to go to the next part of the adventure. So ours is pretty quick this week, but it was a good session. It's good times, and looking forward to the first session of 2024, and we will update you on that game in February.
Woo, whoop.
God, it feels like a long time away, but it really isn't at the same time.
It's crazy how fast, like 2023 is over. Just let that sink in. I haven't yet, listeners.
No,
it is not real to me.
My body is not ready for that yet. And
we're in the time of year now where every time you have to write the date, you're going to be scratching out that 3 to write it. It is that time of year.
Like, there are times like I will write like 2014. I'm like, wait, we haven't been in that year in a long time. Like, what am I doing?
Listeners, if you have time for this story, I have a funny story about the time that I accidentally lied about my age to a police officer. When I was in college, I worked the front desk at the dorm house at the university I was attending, and I worked the night shift, and there was a situation where we had to call the campus police because, something had happened, so we're filling out our police report. And at this time, I was 22 years old. I was a senior in college, and I'd been working this desk for a couple years. The cop's there, he knew me a little bit, but he asks me, "How old are you?" And I say 18. I don't know why I said 18. To this day, and the moment I didn't know why, and I didn't even think about it. It was no thought process. Just he asked me how old I was 18. And he was like, "Okay." And then we sit there for a little bit, and I go, "I'm not 18. I'm 20. Still wrong. In my defense, it was 4 a.m, and I'd been up since like 9. I was like, "Wait, I'm not 20. I'm 21. They go, "No, I'm 22. He goes, "I'm going to have to see your ID, Kyle." So I had to give him my ID. He goes, "You are 22. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so tired." He was like, "You got to work on this. You should be able to rattle off your age."
Oh my God. Well, I'll give you a natural 20 for persuasion, but after that, not so good.
Yeah, he didn't second guess me at all. He should have. He had known me for multiple years, so it should have raised flags when I said I was 18, but it didn't. And then I was like, "Wait a second, I'm 20. Again, still wrong."
This dude's been working a 12-hour shift too, man. Like, he gets it. You're tired. He gets it.
He was like, he was like, "You walk home, right? You don't drive." And I was like, "Yeah, I walk home.
I live in that dorm over there, bro."
Like, "Good." I did have to leave the dorm house to go over to the on-campus apartments, but I literally had to walk like down a sidewalk across the street, and I was there, and he was like, "Okay." Like, "You're good." But I was just that tired that I'd forgotten how old I was.
All right. Well, listeners, if you want to tell us any of your funny college police stories, you can always email us at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. You can hit us up on the Dungeon Master Talk Facebook page. You can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at DMT the podcast, or you can use the hashtag Dungeon Master Talk. We would love to hear from you and just talk D&D, talk life, whatever you want to talk about. We are more than happy to do all of the above. For all of us here at Dungeon Master Talk, I am Shea.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Peace.